When disaster strikes, will you be ready?
Good evening, and we begin tonight with the monster hurricane and its deadly impact already.
When all hope is gone, will the government be there for you? If you're looking for ways to take your prepping to the next level, then you've come to the right place. Broadcasting from a secure and well-prepared location, it's time for Prepping 2.0. And now, please welcome authors Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher.
And welcome, everyone. This is Prepping 2.0, and I am one of your hosts, Shelby Gallagher, joined by my co-host, and we joke about this on the show and in life, Mr. Glenn Tate. Good morning.
Hello. Good morning, Shelby. Good morning. This is going to be a great show. I'm amped up about this, and I drank a ton of coffee, so this is going to be kind of a fun episode. Everyone can listen to my drug problem. Coffee. It's only coffee.
It's caffeine. I got the same problem.
That's right. That's why we're so happy together.
Jeez.
Well, I wanted to let everybody know why I'm excited about this show and this guest. We have Jack Decker, not his real name. I have a lot of friends that don't use their real name, which either means I'm in like the diamond smuggling business, or I have a lot of cool friends in the intelligence community, which I do because I'm not cool. My friends are cool. Anyway, Jack was in the intelligence community. He'll describe that more. He's going to talk about the deep state because he's seen it up close. He's seen the divisions within our government. It's kind of an insider's view of this. It's not Fox News talking about the deep state. It's like a guy who's seen it. And then the other thing he's going to talk about, and candidly, this will probably end up being in the after show, which is for Patreon supporters, because we've got at least an hour to talk about the deep state. The other topic is, this is fascinating. People are anticipating the show quite a bit because in the intelligence community, they war-gamed, which is a simulation of who might win, patriots versus loyalists. And Jack was in the room, and he's got to be vague. There are non-disclosure agreements, which I respect. And so that is a topic that you just have to listen to, and we're really glad to have him. So Shelby, as usual, the top 100 things that go the quickest in a collapse, we have that on our website, prepping2-0.com, where you can find out all kinds of stuff about the show, past episodes. This is a list from Bosnian survivors of the things that went the fastest. What is item number 58?
Item number 58 is garden tools, and I would agree with that. It happens to us every time this time of year as we're getting into spring and stuff. It's like, oh man, I need to go and buy another shovel, another whatever, fill in the blank. And now's the time to get them on sale. Now's the time to get them at, your discounted places like Harbor Freight and, Big Lots and things like that. Get your garden tools and make sure you've got a way to sharpen them and keep them in good order. And we're going to kind of blast through this beginning part because we want to get right to Jack.
More Jack time.
Yep. So I wanted to read to you from one of our former guests. I looked it up. Jeff Reynolds was on the show with us almost exactly a year ago, episode 17, talking about who funds the left. He sent a message to me this morning. And from a trusted friend, this is not somebody who's prone to hyperbole. He says, from my friend who's not prone to hyperbole, former colleague, quote, "The White House communications apparatus conducted a telephone briefing this afternoon on the Wuhan coronavirus. I dialed in along with about 750 of my closest friends and listened in on the reports from various individuals in the DHS and HHS hierarchy. Bottom line is, and this is my interpretive summation, though I think it is accurate, it's a matter of time before the Wuhan coronavirus gets into general population circulation here in the United States. The quantity of unknowns we face as to the nature and dispersal of the disease is stupefying. A consequence less of the virus itself than of the blundering cowardice, secretiveness, and ham-fistedness of the Chinese Communist Party. The CCP's admixture of accelerating brutality and Chernobyl-level reflexive deception, they're still refusing international aid for political purposes, have exacerbated the crisis beyond management. As a consequence, the probability of a global pandemic is fairly high, and the party has succeeded in making itself a genuine menace to all mankind. If you haven't started thinking about what you'll do when this hits North America, start now. The in-the-know people in the government have. It's coming."
Wow. And with coronavirus, all along as this has started, Shelby and I have been very careful to not hype it or to not underplay it. We're taking in the information. Of course, the frustration is the information is from the Chinese Communist Party, which is flawed to start with, And then there's all kinds of media hype and all of this other stuff. And there might be big media wanting to tamp down the scope of the story. So we don't want to scare people one way or the other. And so we've been kind of a little bit silent about this.
Yeah, we've been very silent on it. It's because we want to make sure the information we put out is, we know that people look to us as a resource, and we don't know enough to give to you. But this right here spoke volumes to me. The other thing is, and I will add this to it, article I read yesterday on Drudge Report. Drudge has been doing some great, they're a aggregator. Thank you. I always forget that word, of good posts and good news out there. How people in China right now trying to get news to the rest of the world on the coronavirus are disappearing. They'll post something and they'll post a video, and then the video disappears and the person disappears. And so this right here just this from Jeff Reynolds' colleague just amplifies that. So folks, the bottom line is be prepared. Be prepared.
If you ever needed a reason, now is a reason. I think you're going to see what we've already seen. Key supplies start drying up. And as usual, guys, it is not the actual event that is going to kill you or somebody in your family. Odds of you getting this virus, kind of small. Odds of you dying from this virus, kind of small. But it's still a problem because of the ripple effect.
Yeah.
If people are out buying all the groceries at Walmart because the trucks aren't coming in, that's what the problem is. And then when people realize that half the police are sick or staying home with their families, then you got gangs running wild. It's never the meteor strike hitting you on the head that's the problem. It's the freak out from everybody wondering about the meteor strike, and reacting to it. So we're not hyping it. We're passing on what we know, but this could be a pretty big deal.
Yep, have a plan.
Get survival supplies now, which is a good segue into our sponsors, by the way. Now, we just mentioned them because they have recorded spots in the middle of the show, and you can get all the discount codes and websites there. EMP Shield, we love those guys. They make a device, tested, big military contracts with other entities, and it stops the effects of an EMP on anything it's wired into. Sounds crazy. Go to their website. You can see all the testing and all of that. New Mana, they make long-term, freeze-dried, 25-year storable, freeze-dried food in kind of big bulk portions, family-sized portions, like, hey, I have 6 people over and we're going to have some lasagna. Well, it's like a big pack of freeze-dried lasagna, basically. And I'm not doing them justice. There's more to it than that. By the way, this coronavirus thing, I would expect to create a run on freeze-dried food, so you might want to get it now.
Yes.
Cati Armor, C-A-T-I Armor. That stands for Come and Take It Armor. I love that. Steel body armor with anti-spall coating. Good entry-level body armor, especially if you're not walking up and down mountains all day long with steel body armor. There's that. And then our good friends, Backwoods Home Magazine. They're great. You get a magazine every quarter. It's a reference piece, and it's fun to read, and it's great for the coffee table. We love it. We love the fact that it comes in the mail. You don't have to think to go onto their website. It comes in the mail. That's a cool thing. You know, magazines are a little bit underrated for that kind of stuff. Well, Shelby, why don't you tell folks about the Merch Shack?
What's in the Merch Shack?
What's in the Merch Shack this week? Well, we've talked about this so many times. Go to our website, click on shop, see what we got there. What you'll notice is no longer there is the AR-15 30-round mags. They sold out. We knew they would, and we told you they would because we're not going to be carrying them anymore thanks to tyranny, right?
Yeah, there's a bill pending in Washington State where we live to get rid of real magazines. These were cool. They said I Miss America, and they had the logo on it. And Shelby finds it ironic. She brought this up on a previous show, and I totally agree. Isn't it ironic that magazines that say I Miss America are now illegal to sell in this state? They will be as soon as it passes out of the House. So we have that. But anyway, all kinds of cool stuff. T-shirts. Just go to prepping2-0.com. Go on the shop page. All kinds of cool stuff. Helps us out quite a bit. I wanted to mention the KHNC radio show that I do every week on Fridays, and the archives are available on prepping2-0.com. You seem to hear that URL quite a bit because it's got all the good stuff. Prepping2-0.com. Click on Glenn Tate's KHNC program, and there are all the archives. I do an hour-long show. It's it's so much fun. It's kind of a nice add-on. If you like this show, you're going to want to listen to that show. A lot of fun. And that's where I had Jack Decker on originally. We'll get to that in a moment. PAM Radio, P-A-M Radio, not ham radio, PAM Radio. That stands for Prepper Amateur Radio. It's a set of free electronic flashcards for your phone. It's an app. I guess you could put it on your iPad if you want to be, cool or whatever. And it teaches you everything you need to know about ham radio for preppers and none of the stuff you don't. No equations. There's no reference to the ionosphere. There's no geeking out. It is pure stuff you need to know, what your team needs to know. And it's going to be, I think, a big deal in the prepping world simply because it is that soup to nuts, start to finish. I know nothing about radios, and quite honestly, I don't care. To, oh my goodness, now me and my team can operate with comms. Holy Toledo. We can do so much more stuff. We can watch our neighborhood. We can communicate. This is amazing. And it's not a ham radio prep course. The FCC ham radio test is its own thing. There are resources for that. Knock yourself out. Do that. This is practical. I could have, with the PAM, the P could have meant Prepper Amateur Radio or Practical Amateur Radio. I went with Prepper. But anyway, it's everything you need to know and nothing you don't. So, with that being said, we would like to introduce our guest, Jack Decker, as I mentioned, not his real name. Jack can tell you a little bit about his background, but he's a humble guy, and so I'm going to mention something I know about him, or he won't mention it. He left the entity he was working for on the day that former FBI Director Comey announced that Hillary Clinton would not be indicted for the massive national security crimes that she committed because he'd had enough, and he's a patriot, and he threw away a retirement and a bunch of health care benefits because he wasn't going to be part of something that was that corrupt. And I want people to know that right off the bat. We're dealing with a patriot here, a guy who knows what he's talking about, a guy who's been in the room and understands, how the deep state thinks. So I wanted to say hello, Jack, and let you fill in any biographical blanks that I left out.
Oh, good morning, Glenn. Glad to be back. You covered it exceptionally well. For your listeners out there, if they haven't heard me on your radio show, I was a GS-15 with the agency that I was working for. And if your listeners aren't familiar with that, the next government service grade up from there requires congressional approval. I would actually need to be confirmed by Congress. Not that was ever going to happen. But when you said that I left my agency the day that Comey announced that Hillary was exceptionally careless and didn't engage in gross negligence, we've talked about my background. Our mutual friend knows, what I was involved in and what I did. And, I could say, that I have done some extremely shady things for that particular paycheck. But that was my line in the sand. Seeing that the concept of divine right of kings still exists in what's supposed to be a constitutional republic, I couldn't continue. Walked away from $160,000 a year to take a $50,000 a year job in the private sector, which barely pays my bills. But principle to me still counts. And again, that's why I like talking to you and coming on this show, because I know we have the exact same mindset.
Yeah. Tell folks what the deep state is and what you've seen and why they need to care about the deep state and that it's not a conspiracy. It's a wide open topic. Just talk, because that's what people want to hear. They want to hear you, not us.
Roger that. What the deep state is to break it down to its base level, government employees. These are civilians that are hired by the government that fill the various bureaucracies and agencies, and they are the ones that run the government. Now, the flashy stuff, the president, we have Congress, we have the Supreme Court, that's all front and center. That's the public face. That's the Wizard of Oz, is the government that sits in Washington, D.C., in the Capitol, in the White House. The work of the government is done by, obviously, government workers. And they range, from low-grade government workers. The man who sweeps the halls of the Pentagon is on a GS schedule, all the way up to Special Executive Intelligence Services. And these people are the movers and shakers who actually decide how policy is going to be carried out. And in addition, they wield the real power by issuing rulings or judgments on things that carry the force of law. And what you find within these, what I call super grades, when you talk like GS-15, SEIS, these individuals are convinced that they know what's best for the country, that the people who go and cast their ballots, they don't know what's best. And the overwhelming majority of these people have signed on to, and I hate using this term because it sounds kind of conspiracy theorist, but a globalist agenda, in that, national sovereignty isn't front and center anymore. The rule of law under our Constitution isn't front and center anymore, with deference to the UN, open borders, free trade, all of which degrades our country as a whole, but serves, again, international bankers. It's such a loaded term, but in reality, that's what we're dealing with. And we've seen it occur. We've seen the evolution in the media, with several exceptions. The media, by and large, are lapdogs and a propaganda wing. And for years, when President Trump first got elected, and I'll be the first one to say I did not vote Trump for president. I have strong libertarian leanings, so I voted for Mr. Johnson. But when President Trump was elected, he was not part of the game. Whether it was, you look at Mitt Romney, the Bushes, the Clintons, Obama, you'll see the progression of the power and the centralization of power within D.C. And every successive administration has existed to coalesce and grab more power to itself at the expense of the states, the counties, towns, and the individual citizens. Mr. President Trump was the ultimate outsider. Brash, New Yorker, wasn't part of that circle. And the individuals who comprise the deep state, or the big players, guys like Clapper, Brennan, Comey, Hillary Clinton was the heir apparent. The media was saying it, 98% chance to win the election, and they misread the tone that they were putting out, the deplorables, and you saw it again. Anybody who voted for President Trump, was an uneducated backwoods redneck, as if that was some sort of slur to be insulting. And the people turned out, they elected President Trump, and that could not stand. So the first was, and I actually had quite a few discussions about this, with friends of mine, as far as the Russian dossier. And I'm not sure how familiar your listeners are with FISA courts, but the requirements for getting a FISA warrant are so strict and so detailed. I'm not going to say it's almost impossible to get one, but it is exceptionally, exceptionally difficult. And what these deep state operatives, again, it's a loaded term, but I'm going to go ahead and use it. They went and they took a report whose genesis was the Democratic National Committee paid a former foreign intelligence agency millions of dollars, laundered through a law firm, billed out as legal consultation fees, to go pay agents of the Russian state security apparatus, the FSB, to prepare this report. Now, they brought this report into the FBI, and they walked up to the FISA courts with it. And they laid this thing down, and they took bits and pieces from it as far as the warrant application to make it seem as if this was holy writ. Now, I've read it, and if one of the people that worked for me in my division had handed me product that looked like this, they would have been looking for a new job the next day. My son could have done better in 6th grade. So they took this warrant, and then they used that warrant to then go conduct surveillance on a presidential campaign. And they used that warrant to compromise the integrity of that campaign. And if you'll see the media, this one was convicted, this one was convicted. We have General Michael Flynn, who's in the process of withdrawing his guilty plea at the moment, who is a fine, upstanding individual. Nobody's perfect, but Mike Flynn is a solid guy. Anybody who's ever worked for him has loved him. He's looked out for his people. Is a genuine patriot. I hate comparing myself to somebody of that stature, but one of the reasons I said, I would never wind up getting my stamp of approval was I refuse to alter product or reports that we would put out to match the administration's political goals. And General Flynn was a similar type of individual and was wound up being relieved of his directorship for that. But what they did was, it's not an entrapment, but I also have a law enforcement background. I spent 13 years as a police officer. If you're looking to jam somebody up and flip them, you put them in a position where it's very, very easy for them to not lie, but to make a mistake in what they're saying and commit that essentially to paper, which is what a deposition or, being interviewed by the FBI is. And you look at all of the charges that were laid out against members of President Trump's team, none of it has anything to do with Russia. It's all what we call process crimes. Did you meet with, this individual on this day at this time? Yes, we were there. Well, according to our records, it was 3 days before. Now you just lied to us. There's your first charge. And it's designed to keep somebody off balance. Now, as a law enforcement officer, we would do that to get somebody to flip on the next person up the chain of command. Whether you're working, organized crime, whether you're working narcotics trafficking, you don't want the guys out on the street. You want the ones that are out there, shooting people. You want the ones that are out there trafficking, 100 kilograms of fentanyl into the country or whatever it may be. But in this case, they went after...
And Jack, it always happens. We have to interrupt you right in the middle of something great because of a commercial break for our hard radio time. Stick around, everybody. Jack's just getting warmed up on the deep state, and then he's going to be talking about intelligence agencies' assessment of who wins the next Civil War. Stick around.
We'll be right back with more of Prepping 2.0 with authors Shelby Gallagher and Glenn Tate right after this.
Prepping 2.0 is about that next level of prepping. One of the key 2.0 items to have is bulletproof body armor plates. I used to think body armor was too tactical for a regular guy like me, but it isn't. Give yourself, your family, and your team an unfair advantage when bullets are flying. Body armor used to be expensive and hard to get. Not anymore. KD Armor, and that stands for Come and Take It, makes solid and affordable body armor for normal people. Get body armor while you can. The clowns in Congress are trying to prohibit future sales. KD Armor is the place to get it. CATI Armor.com. Prepping 2.0 listeners get a 10% discount when you use the coupon code GRANT.
When the grid goes down, darkness will descend fast. Used to be there was nothing you could do about an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, or CME, coronal mass ejection. Now you can protect your electronics, protect your family, thanks to EMP Shield. EMP Shield invented a simple-to-install device that prevents whatever's connected to it from frying in an EMP or CME, and it costs just a few $100s. EMP Shield has been tested by independent laboratories and passed muster with the government, which has ordered lots of them. Google EMP Shield and see for yourself. And save some money. Get a $50 discount per device. Go to prepping2-0.com. Click on the Friends and Affiliates page, then click on the EMP Shield logo. At checkout, use coupon code PREPPING 2.0. It's all one word.
PrepperNet, where preppers unite. Looking to meet other like-minded people in your area? Looking to start your own prepper group? Already have a group? Join PrepperNet.com. PrepperNet has gathered the biggest names in the industry to help unite preppers everywhere. Join John Jacob Schmidt, Scott Hunt, Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy, Glenn Tate, Shelby Gallagher, Charlie Hogwood, Samuel Culper, Survivor Jane, Rick Austin, Franklin Horton, Ryan Mitchell, and Brian Duff. Our team is united. Check us out at PrepperNet.com. PrepperNet, where preppers unite. PrepperNet.com.
Shelby Gallagher here. We found that you need to layer your food preps.
Yeah, this is Glenn Tate here. A lot of times the hardest part of layering is the long-term foods. We love Numana foods, which have a 25-year shelf life and are non-GMO. Also, organic meals are available.
Numana comes in family-style portions and in bulk. This is not backpacking food. It's family meals that last for at least 25 years. The perfect freeze-dried part of your food layering.
You can get a sample of Numana meals for $19.95 and see for yourself. You will be amazed.
Prepping 2.0 listeners get a 10% discount by entering the code PREP.
Go to Numana.com or click the link on the Prepping 2.0 website.
Give it a try. Numana.com. That is Numanna.com.
And we're back with more of Prepping 2.0 with authors Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Shelby Gallagher with Prepping 2.0 with our special guest today, Jack Decker. Jack, just keep right on going with your train of thought there.
Roger. So what we've seen is, from the Russian collusion narrative, we then moved on to the Ukraine narrative, the quid pro quo, where I'll give the Democrats credit. They attempted to impeach Trump for what Joe Biden did on video. That was a work of art.
Cojones.
What we're seeing now is pushback against those individuals who think that because they've spent their time in government service, that there should be the only authority on how our foreign policy goes, how our domestic policy goes. You're seeing the pushback, and it's coming from the top. President Trump, rightfully so, said, you know what, I'm the president. I set executive policy. I set foreign policy. Lieutenant Colonel Vindman does. Eric Ciaramella doesn't. I do. So the Attorney General and various, I'm going to call them good guys, have started doing their own digging. And what we're seeing, and the ball that's starting to roll, it's like that, the little rock that falls off a cliff and hits, and it dislodges a bigger rock and then the bigger rocks. So what we're seeing now is the beginning of the landslide, and the desperation, that the globalists, the leftists, the progressives are getting into right now is they see it coming. They see those storm clouds on the horizon, and as this avalanche gets closer and closer, I believe over, starting possibly in late summer, and again, I'm just shotgunning this out there, and I'm making an analysis of this. I would expect to see, starting in late summer, very early fall, the beginnings of indictments against people like Comey and Clapper and Brennan, who were involved in the FISA warrant, who were, in my opinion, engaging in sedition, attempting to remove a lawfully elected government from office because they thought they knew better. And the reaction from the left, who are just historically reactionary to begin with, I believe once their movers and shakers start getting removed, whether they're various GS grade employees, like Page and Strzok and the rest of those, or even up to senators and representatives who were involved in this, possibly getting removed from office. That's when we're going to start to see the breakdown of society. because whether your viewers realize it or not, we are already at the point of what we call nascent insurgency. The groundwork is there. The groundwork's already been laid. You'll see, and you mentioned earlier, in regards to, various magazine bans, various bans on firearms. There's a reason for that. There's a reason the government doesn't want the people to be able to fight back. There's a reason they push for open borders. It's to ensure that, those on the right, I won't even say the right side of the aisle because I'm a libertarian, but that the constitutionalists, the people who believe in the idea of the republic, they want to make sure that these people cannot resist the agenda that was supposed to have been carried on by Hillary Clinton, which was, torpedoed by the election of President Trump. And what you see happening in, places like Portland, Oregon now, where these groups of rabid leftists are running around just beating people and blocking traffic and setting things on fire and hitting people with bear spray. And you have a mayor ordering the police force to stand down and not interfere and allowing these groups to run wild. I see President Trump being reelected, and that this next election, what we're seeing is the end result of tribal politics and playing politics as a sport, where it's gone from these people think a little bit differently than I do, but we want the same goals. When you had Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, they would argue back and forth and then sit down to a steak and scotch at the end of the day. That doesn't exist anymore. The left is the enemy to the right is the enemy to the left. And the vitriol that is coming out, realistically, it all starts with the left. And within government service, you're looking at about a 75-25% split is against the constitutionalist point of view, against the rule of the republic, and about 75% towards the globalist. The difference is that the 75% are the upper level, and the 25% are the guys who are out doing things, like the average FBI agent who's out there catching kidnappers, catching sex traffickers, catching the people who really don't belong walking free in our society, by and large believe in the rule of law. You've seen in Virginia, the sanctuary counties, sheriffs, elected sheriffs standing up saying, we will not obey this law. I know several Virginia state troopers and police officers within the state of Virginia who said, look, we don't agree with this. We're not going to go out. We're not going to go out door to door. That's just no. We'd rather resign. And there are honorable people out there. Places like New York City, Los Angeles, major cities, of course, they come from that type of mindset. They draw from the community. So if you have, a cobalt blue community, you're going to have cobalt blue police officers who, buy into this, this radical progressive agenda. But, and here's where, the stick in the rub is, or the stick in the mud is, the cities depend on rural areas for sustenance. The food, the water, the electric.
Yeah.
There's no coal plant in downtown Manhattan. There aren't potato fields in the middle of Los Angeles. So as these things start rolling, you're going to start seeing, and what I call it cascading failure, is, the cities start revolting, start burning, truckers, train engineers, they're not going to want to go into these areas because of the danger of being attacked. So the cities are going to start to starve. And that's where you're going to see migration of the people out from these areas further and further, looking for food, looking for clean water. I have friends that lived in communist countries. Their two biggest commodities were salt and toilet paper. Salt to preserve food and toilet paper for obvious reasons, but both of those, according to them, were good as gold. So you're going to see these people start moving out. The rural areas aren't going to have the same issues, as far as food production, as far as water goes, because it all starts in those areas and then flows towards the city. The downside is things like medicine, which typically flow from, urban centers, manufacturing plants, and then go outwards from there. So, there is that little bit of a trade. But we are seeing late-stage nascent insurgency, and I believe, if not the next election cycle, the election cycle after, we are going to start seeing the balkanization of our nation.
Wow, and Shelby, you had a thought on this.
Well, and what I was thinking as I'm listening to this is I talk about this in my books. My book's A Great State, where truckers start taking routes that take them out into the country instead of the city because they keep getting their robbed and beat up and all of that. So yeah, the trucking industry and the city versus rural divide, and that's why one of the reasons why I called my series A Great State, and the first one's called The Divide, is because there's an immediate divide between country and city and rural and blue and red and sanctuary versus not sanctuary. That's where I saw those fissures begin that you talk about 5-6 years ago. I wrote my books about 3 years ago, but I could see what you're talking about coming very quickly. And I think I joke with Glenn about this. The covers of my book have maps on them for that very reason. I asked my designer to make those maps the way they did, the way they came out for that very reason. So I feel like I knew what I was talking about, because I can, as an average citizen that doesn't work in the intelligence community, I'm learning more from you about the deep state than I have from anybody else. But as a citizen who is politically aware, I can see this coming. So as a prepper, that's why one of the reasons why I up my prepping quite a bit, because I honestly can't depend on government right now, or should you ever, for my survival and my thriving. So what are your thoughts on that, though, Jack?
Well, everybody, in my mind, everybody should have an eye towards prepping. And, if you think, the folks like myself or folks like you, who have stockpiled, a certain amount of food, water purification devices, whether it's stabilized fuel, medicines, whatever the case may be, if they think we're a little weird, well, why do you think that, multimillionaires, billionaires, government representatives are all having either, safe room bunkers, built into their residences? They have bug out locations that they can go to, that are outside of populated areas. If you see, paragons of industry, for lack of a better term, doing it, it makes even more sense for ordinary citizens like you and I, who don't have the resources that these individuals do, to do what we can to ensure our safety and survival in the breakdown of society. And it is coming. You look around you, you see everything fraying at the edges. And to a degree, it's by design.
Right.
Would the progressives prefer that, everybody, winds up in this nice little socialist utopia peacefully and everybody gets along and, happy, joy? Of course they would. And the reason they would very much like it to go that way is because they know for a fact that they are going to be on the losing side. And the reason I say that is I sat in on wargaming for domestic insurgency and massive nationwide civil unrest. And regardless of what the precipitating event of it was, whether it's, I'll be a little bit topical here and say, okay, well, if President Trump gets reelected, the left is going to go absolutely insane. And, I firmly believe that they will. Or whether you look at it from, we get somebody, I know he dropped out, but, like Beto O'Rourke, we're going to go door to door and we're going to take everybody's guns and, we're going to take 90% of your paycheck to pay for, everything else, and you're going to live on the scraps. And it's actually the right that revolts. Whichever way it goes, the constitutionalists, the ones that believe in our republic, they wind up coming out on top. And the reason is we control the resources. We're the ones farming. We're the ones, mining the coal. We're
Right.
the ones drilling the oil. We're the ones driving the trucks. So the progressives tend to center around urban areas, and we saw it during New Orleans after Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
When you have government services that are cut off, 48 to 96 hours, that population goes completely feral. It degenerates into absolute anarchy. Might makes right. Whoever has the biggest gun wins. And that's what that's what they're going to devolve into. Whereas when you see bad things happen in rural communities, it goes the opposite way. People are banding together. They're sharing food. They're sharing resources. They're helping each other get back up on their feet. Because progressivism, for all its, we want everybody to be equal, it is inherently a selfish thing.
Right.
This man has more than me, so he has to give me some of his, so we could be equal, and, I'm going to send the government after him if he doesn't. Whereas on the Republic side of things, people look at it as, hey, that guy isn't doing too well. Maybe I'll go over and I'll shovel my neighbor's walk and, make sure he's got food because, he lost his job. So I'll invite him over to dinner, and I'll make sure, the guy across the street invites him over the next day. There's a complete difference in mindset. And when we went through these war games, some of what was incorporated was the psychological aspect of things. And the mindset of we are going to take from you will always be beaten by you're not going to take what's mine. If somebody that wants to go in and kidnap a child and the parents are home, the parents are going to fight 1,000 times harder than the person trying to kidnap the child. And that's just basic human nature. It's the way that we're wired. And I won't even go into, one side having all the guns and the other side can't figure out what latrine to use. But, at the end of the day, though, when you're dealing with the failure of society, and the event horizon is behind us. It is going to occur. It's a question of when. But when you're dealing with failure of society, there's no such thing as having too big of a stockpile of resource, whether it's food, whether it's the ability to collect and purify water, whether it's medicine that you're going to need, or emergency supplies, or even ammunition and magazines for your firearm to be able to defend those resources that you've stockpiled. That's becoming more and more and more critical as time goes on, and that's why you see again the desperation on the left to try and impeach Trump. Let's try and get him out with Russian collusion. Let's try and get him out with the Ukraine. They're going to have to move on, to the next thing. I'm waiting for Adam Schiff to say, I have evidence that'll get President Trump out of office. I just haven't figured out what I'm going to lie about next. It's all this. When you say drain the swamp, that's one of President Trump's catchphrases. I'm going to drain the swamp. It really is a swamp filled with loathsome, self-serving creatures. The people that are honorable, the people that will speak the truth, no matter how harsh that truth may be, are few and far between. But the ones that I know, the ones that I personally know, the ones that I associated with, are individuals, like me. They have principles, they have purpose, and they're in there. They're fighting the good fight. They are doing what they can. And we're going to start seeing the results of it again, analyzing and predicting, more than likely towards the end of the summer. And again, that's for a political reason. There's enough out there right now that, 100 years ago, people would be breaking out the barrels of tar and, the bags of feathers. So we're going to start seeing this, and as this builds momentum, and light will always beat dark. There's no such thing as pouring dark into a room. You can only illuminate things. And as the depth of the corruption begins becoming illuminated, and the ball starts rolling, that's when you're going to start to see the civil unrest start. That's when you're going to see, resources beginning to get scarce. We've seen it over in China with the coronavirus. Entire cities are locked down, transportation hubs are locked down. There's no food to be had. Nobody's collecting garbage. Garbage is piling up on the streets.
Well, and Jack, I'm going to jump in there. That's the kind of the new, I don't know, fly in the ointment, I guess, at this point. Where do you see, as you think about the timeline that you just predicted for summer? And yes, we know that it's just, at this point, it's prediction. Where does the coronavirus fit into all of this? I think that's really interesting.
I don't want to go too far off the rails, and wind up sounding, like a conspiracy theorist, talking, just wild speculation. But, the Chinese government was threatened by these Hong Kong protesters, and how much have we heard about Hong Kong protesters lately?
Exactly. Exactly.
So when you're dealing with an autocratic government, nothing is off the table. And although I didn't vote for Mr. Trump, I am glad that he is currently our president. As much as they talk, the progressives talk about him being a dictator and him being a Nazi, he is exactly the opposite. When the Deferred Action for Children came up for him to sign, he said, this isn't my job. I don't make laws. If you want this to be a law, the House and the Senate have to pass bills, and you put it before my desk, and then I'll consider it. But I can't do this by executive order. It's wrong for me to do this. We have an individual, as brash as he is, as much as he really needs to stay off of Twitter, he has a grasp on how the three branches of government should operate. And I truly believe that he believes in our republic, in our constitutional republic, and is doing what's best for our republic, and we see that. Mm-hmm. We see the economies, we see the unemployment numbers, but contrast that with China, where they have carte blanche. I've seen videos of Chinese individuals dressed in the Tyvek suits with the full CNBC members, CBRN masks. Sorry about that. Walking down the streets with rifles, herding people up.
Right.
Are those people sick, or are those people that the government, wants to get rid of right now? There was a filmmaker a while back who wound up, unfortunately, killing his wife, his child, and himself. That was producing a movie called Gray Man, about life under a totalitarian regime, here in the United States. And I believe we would have seen that, if not, by the end of my lifetime, by the end of my son's lifetime, because that is the eventual plan of any government anywhere is autocratic power.
Right.
I always laugh when people say, "Oh, we need the government to help us." Like, okay, look, I worked for them. Government creates problems, and the only solution to those problems is more government.
Yeah.
It's a recurring theme. So, but President Trump has just thrown a monkey wrench into all of that. And even the pushback from, the normal people, from the deplorables. It used to be, if you criticize President Obama, you were a racist, you don't like that policy because it's being put forth by a black man. Well, it's kind of like, when you were in high school, if your girlfriend, kept accusing you of cheating, accusing you, yelling at you every single day, sooner or later you're going to get it into your mind like, well, if I'm doing the time, I might as well do the crime.
There you go, yeah.
So people just don't care anymore about the various epithets that they're throwing out. And
right.
They keep pushing, the more radical agendas keep coming to the forefront, because the old agendas, and the old slurs and the old insults, which used to shut the constitutionalists up, I don't want to be called a racist, so I'm going to be quiet now. And it allowed them to win by default. Mm-hmm. That paradigm, that structure isn't there anymore. And the more ridiculous things get and the more extreme the less position gets, the more people are saying, you know what, that's wrong. That's you're out of your mind. You need to stop this now. Universal health care, things like this looks like every socialist idea. It looks great on the surface, but the implementation is going to be horrendous. So you're seeing a pushback from, the constitutionalist side. I'll say from the Republican side in the scope of, our republic.
Little R, not big R Republican.
Yes.
Yeah, not the political party, but the concept of republicanism. You're seeing a resurgence in federalism, where the federal government should maintain a very small role. With the upside down pyramid as far as power goes. Instead of one entity at the top holding all the power, you need to flip that over and have that broad base controlling most of the governmental power over here. And that goes back to the 75-25% split.
Mm-hmm.
Like they said, the FBI agents, the DEA agents, the individuals, with the CIA's Directorate of Operations who are out there amongst them right now, risking their lives in order to advance our national objectives. Those individuals look at what our government's become. And again, these are the individuals, that I tend to associate with, that I call friends. They look at what our government has become, and they're horrified. We were slowly turning into a banana republic.
Hey, Jack.
Autocratic.
Jack, guess what? It's the end of the second segment for the regular show. We're going to come back in the after show. If you're a Patreon, you're going to be able to listen to this. And I'm going to ask Jack, I know you can't tell us how long the various wars take place in the analysis because you're a professional and you're not going to disclose stuff. I'm going to ask you, Jack, in the after show, how long you have prepared for. I mean, how many months, days, or years do you have prep set aside for? Because that's going to let some people know how long they need to. So stick around, everybody.
You've been listening to Prepping 2.0 with authors Shelby Gallagher and Glenn Tate. All of the fun and easy prepping information heard on this podcast can be found online at prepping2-0.com. You can also find out more about Glenn's books online at 299days.com and about Shelby's books online at agreatstate.com. Until next time, be smart, be safe, and be prepared.